My name is Madeline Johnson. I'm director of the ASCOA here in Miami. Welcome to all of you, our distinguished panel, our Council of the Americas members, our Young Professionals of the Americas members, friends, and special guests. As many of you know, the Americas Society and Council of the Americas are committed to addressing the most important issues facing Latin America and the Caribbean. One of our greatest strengths lies in connecting the public and private sectors for dialogue on regional challenges to explore solutions, whether they're economic, political, or social issues. We regularly host private, off-the-record meetings to bring these two groups together, and also host public forums such as this in 10 countries in the hemisphere. Innovation and entrepreneurship have long been cornerstones of our vision to enhance democracy and development in the region, and this program is part of a series that addresses these issues in Miami. This program is also notable because it is the first joint forum between the Young Professionals of the Americas, YPA Miami, and our broader ASCOA membership, promoting intergenerational connections on important substantive issues. We launched YPA Miami just a few months ago to offer a new space for young professionals who are interested in connecting around policy, culture, and innovation in the Americas, offering monthly programs exclusively for YPA members, allowing young professionals to connect across sectors and learn from experts as well as each other. So before we move into the discussion today, I want to give a special welcome to a few distinguished guests. First of all, Boris Irmas, a board member of the council and also here of the lab, an entrepreneur and investor with strong interests in innovative technologies, urban issues through Urban Us, mobile payments, biometrics, and a great friend of the Young Professionals of the Americas. So I cannot go without acknowledging you, Boris. And also to a few members of our YPA steering committee who are here, namely WIFI with the lab. I think I saw Daniel Palacios come in and Jacqueline Hess. This is the team that works behind the scenes to bring these panels and social events for YPA. So find us afterwards, bring your ideas, because this network is all about our members. Before I turn the panel over to my colleague Alana Tumino and the panel, Nancy and I would like to also thank the sponsors of our 2014 ASCOA Miami programs, Solistics, Chevron, Cisco, Citi, HBO, and Kroll, as well as our global webcast sponsor, Telefonica. Without further ado, Alana Tumino is Director of Policy at ASCOA and Senior Editor of America's Quarterly, our policy journal, which she'll tell you more about. She has great expertise in microfinance and social inclusion and leads the ASCOA's work on Cuba issues and natural resource extraction, among other things. So, Alana, over to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Madeline, and thank you, WIFI, for the introduction. We are really happy to be here at Lab Miami. This is personally my first time here in this space, and it's amazing, and it's really exciting, and it just feels really enterprising and innovative just being here. So before we launch into the discussion, I just wanted to give a little bit about background on the magazine America's Quarterly and why we chose sustainable cities for this issue. So America's Quarterly, as Madeline said, is a policy journal. We publish it 4 times a year, as the name would suggest, quarterly. And we choose a featured topic for each issue, whether that's energy, education, social inclusion, the growing middle class in Latin America. And so for this issue, for our winter 2014 issue, we chose the topic of sustainable cities. This is an extremely important topic, given that the majority of the region, about 80% of the population, lives in cities. A majority of the world population is moving to cities too, and we're just seeing extreme rapid urban growth. And with that comes a lot of challenges. So this issue of AQ that I have here and that you guys all have on your seats shows how cities are improving sustainability, how these efforts translate across social classes and political administrations. We explored how cities have become more environmentally friendly, safer, and more integrated. And we looked at this from a variety of different angles. We looked at governance, we looked at water management, at citizen engagement, at waste management and recycling, at security, at energy efficiency, green housing, transportation, public space, from a variety of different perspectives. And the articles, hopefully you guys will all have a chance to read it if you haven't already, come from a variety of experts. We have policymakers such as the former mayor of Mexico City, Marcelo Ebrard, who talks about kind of reviving his once very polluted Mexico City into what it is today. We have articles from the Inter-American Development Bank about how they've been partnering with cities all across the hemisphere on building infrastructure and combating climate change. We have an article from our very own panelist, Horacio, on water management and urban flooding. We have articles from 2 journalists that were based in the region, one in Bogota, one in Curitiba, 2 cities that are kind of pioneering the green city movement in the region. And we look to see how their cities' urban policies have really tried to address the issue of social inclusion and trying to incorporate poorer communities into this whole process of updating and sustainability. And then we have 2 AQ charticles. These are articles that are really based around charts. We think they're really fun to look at and interactive. One is highlighting kind of the best practices in different cities, whether it's in transportation or public green space or housing. And we have another charticle that's on our favorite apps in the region for your smartphones. So we look forward to getting feedback on this issue. There's probably a lot of experts here in the room as well. I think overall, traditionally what we're seeing is that the way governments have really tried to address these issues in the past haven't been working, and we need a different focus. And a lot of that focus is now being turned toward cities. A lot of innovative solutions are coming out of, coming from policies that mayors are creating, coming out of partnerships between the public sector and the private sector, civil society and the technology community. And they're having a really big impact of the quality of life for people who live in these cities. Oddly enough, on my commute home last night, I'm in New York, I was listening to a podcast, and my latest Freakonomics podcast this week was on If Mayors Ruled the World. And it was a really timely podcast to listen to right before this discussion tonight, just because it really underscored how everyone is talking about the shift to cities and how cities are where the action is at. Cities are where you're having these, it's a hub for action and for change and kind of housing some of the most innovative solutions right now to complex problems. So I'm really excited to introduce our esteemed panel. We're going to have a discussion up here for about 35 to 40 minutes or so, the first half of the discussion section, and then I want to turn it over to you guys and have a really vibrant question and answer. I'm sure people here have a lot to say on the topic. So first, to my right is Jordi. Jordi is a prominent member of the Council of the Americas and is a longtime Cisco executive who serves currently as president for Latin America. He was previously based in Spain, running the European market, in addition to those of Turkey and Israel. Notably, he worked very closely on the transformation of Barcelona into a smart city, which we're going to hear about in just a few moments. He came to Miami not only to bring the smart city expertise to the Americas, but also with strong experience supporting high-growth markets in challenging economies. We're so happy to have you with us today. Next, we have Sean. Sean is the founder of Urban.us, an accelerator that works with startups that want to make cities better, and he's actually housed here, which I just saw. I've never seen a walking desk before. I thought that was really amazing. You must get a lot of exercise at work.
I don't get anywhere.
Okay, well, it's pretty exciting. I thought the stand-up desk was like, the big thing, but walking desk, that's amazing. He is a longtime tech investor interested in companies responding to the most challenging problems facing our society, and is author of Crowdstorm, a guide to working with large online crowds to find and evaluate ideas. Originally from South Africa, he has lived in New York, but now calls Miami home. Thanks for joining us, Sean. And finally, we have Horacio from the IDB. He is the Infrastructure and Environment Sector Coordinator of the Emerging and Sustainable Cities Initiative there. He is also serving as lead specialist in the Water and Sanitation Division, and as I said, he also has an article in here on water management and urban flooding. He is trained as an engineer and has 20 years experience in urban environmental field, both in the private sector and with multilateral development organizations, working on issues from carbon financing and urban environmentalism to pollution and hazardous waste disposal. Thanks so much for making the trip to Miami. So Jordi, I'll start with you. If you can just explain to us, how do you define sustainable cities, or as Cisco works in smart cities, and explain Cisco's work as it relates to bringing greater technology and connectivity around the world, and how you brought this model to Latin America.
Well, actually, you explain everything. I don't know what else. You do wonderful, by the way. So first, thank you very much to give me the chance. I really appreciate all the sponsors on this event, especially the people that here. And Smart city is an important subject. Actually, when you take Latin America countries, but not only Latin America countries, most of the countries that you see them, the competitiveness in the World Economic Competitiveness List ranking, you will notice that there are countries that they are growing currently, their ranking is very difficult, very tough. So it means that those countries are really fragile in front of the different economic cycles. So the city is a key asset. Is, as you said, is a hub for innovation. And the innovation is a key factor for competitiveness. Now, whatever we build around a city, how much smart we build a city, that will impact directly to the innovation. You mentioned about inclusion and diversity. More inclusion, more diversity is equal more innovation, more creativity, more ability to build things. You mentioned about Barcelona city. I remember Barcelona many years ago. It was a city in trouble. It was really a city that they lost big part of their revenue incomes when they lost the textile industry. Around 12% of the entire city were textile factories, residents, and all complementary industrial elements around that business model that disappeared around the 16th and 17th. Right. They had to build something new around technology, and they built from scratch a district they call right now 22 Act District, which is probably the industrial core right now, the new industrial core, the new economy based on the information society in the city. Today that city has zero deficit. They produce thousands and thousands new jobs. There are universities in that district where they are actually former textile factories renovated, but keeping the same appearance outside. And there are universities where they build startups, incubators, and many of those things. So it's very well connected. We believe that a smart city has high levels of mobility. When I mean mobility, is not only transportation, it's a smart mobility, the possibility that anybody could work any place and has that flexibility to do in order to be more productive. Is also the capacity to be very efficient in terms of energy consumption or water consumption or any elements around it, because the energy consumption impacts directly to the average cost of the city. And also is the ability to create an environment that people will work around big projects, and those projects will create a new industry. We talk about sensing industry. Sensing industry is an emerging industry. All the cities, we will need millions and millions of sensors, different kind of. The outcome of that data point will produce new business model all across. So we will need more software development, more processes. It's not just only about technology, it's also about people, how they use the technology. They need different procedures, different process, more integrated subjects. The network is a key component of it. The network will gather all the information with the data center, and that will produce all the different ways to manage the entire city. Let me show one video example that I have been personally working for years. That is a great model, proven proof of concept model that we think is going to be very, very crucial for the Latin America cities. And actually, we have already started to replicate that model in some of the examples. And we will show some future events about how we do that based upon this. We're talking about the city protocol, the city governance model, and the way that a city hall has to be structured, politically speaking, and also from governance point of view, administrative point of view, in order to produce more wealth at a higher standard of living for the citizens. Let's go to the video.
As the world continues to urbanize, with 180,000 people a day moving into cities, the competition between cities will continue to grow, economically, environmentally, and even socially. The cities that embrace technology will surface as the winners.
Cisco is extremely excited about Barcelona because the city is utilizing the Internet of Everything. By connecting its people and things to a city Wi-Fi, Barcelona is creating new services, richer experiences, and unprecedented economic opportunity for its people, for its businesses, and for its partners.
Barcelona is a social dream, and technology is able to make this social dream possible. What we're trying to put in place is a common solution for all the cities of the world.
Well, this is the short one,
I
actually.
think I saw the longer version.
So there are many things here that they were missing in this video. There are another video version that they will show you the smart lighting, the parking management, the waste processing, for example, the water optimization, because water, any kind of city without water optimization is losing around 35% to the water resources. The same when they develop energy. They set up, for example, a kind of recycling factory that they recycle waste and they get energy from it. As a combination of that energy, they have a savings of 30% total energy savings all across. Education and healthcare, connected hospitals and connected and develop a kind of platform that allow the different doctors to collaborate all across the medical interactions is crucial for increased productivity, to reduce cost, and even to move the innovation in that area to a different level. So those kind of elements that I think is so important for a city perspective.
Great. Thank you. I'll have some follow-up questions, but we'll go through some other ones first. Sean, explain to me why cities. Urban.us works with startups that want to make cities better. So first, I guess the question is why cities? And then explain a little bit the work of, with these startups, and how does that relate to, the work that's already being put in place by Cisco to make these more technology-oriented, smarter cities?
So first of all, thanks everyone. I hate looking outside and seeing a nice end of day like this and sitting inside, so thanks for coming out. So for me, I guess, two motivations, greed and fear. So the greed part is very easy. When you look at the statistics, if there are more people moving to cities and we don't want to pay more taxes, and then we also want cities to reduce their footprint, we're asking cities to perform magic. And historically, cities don't do magic, right? They don't make miracles. But startups actually have a pretty good track record at working miracles. A lot of them fail, but the ones that make it, within 5 years, can have quite a substantial impact. So as an investor, that's interesting. And so just going through the categories of problems, there are no small problems, right? If you see a business plan for a company that's working on a city problem, the numbers tend to be very big. So that's the greed side. The other side is fear, right? So I have little kids. I live in Miami, and then you have discussions about sea level rise. You have discussion about what you think the world looks like in 20 years or 50 years. And that's scary to me. Like, I don't think we've figured out how to solve some really hard problems. And so I'm happy that people are working on it already. I just would love to see more people, more founders, more people who want to do 10x better solutions for water management or energy management. Mobility solutions. I just think more people are better. And if there's a way for investors to get a return, that's a bonus. In terms of how I think solutions like what Cisco is providing, startups can't. I mean, if you have to start from the assumption that you have stable connectivity. You have to start from the assumption that if you put things into the cloud is there. Absolutely, all the time. And if you can make those assumptions, you can do magical things. You can do really interesting things, right? So some of the companies I work with, they have energy solutions, they retrofit heating systems, right? And they can get, on their first try, without optimization, 40% reduction in fuel use. But they live on top of a system that includes the cloud, that includes connectivity, and they can rely on. And they live on top of systems that include a smartphone. And if they can rely on all those things, the cost for them to come up with a great idea and with $500,000 prove that it's possible. Every week I expect to see another thing. And we talk about 30%, it's actually really funny, but I expect people to show up and say, I used $500,000 to get a 30% improvement in something, right? And it's reliable at like once a month that happens. And in large part it's because they can assume that the bulletproof infrastructure that they need is in place. So.
Great, thank you. Horacio, tell us a little bit about IDB's initiative and how you chose, I know you're partnering I think with 50 cities right now in this first phase, how you chose those cities, the methodology that went into it.
Okay. Let me explain what triggered the initiative and where we are
Sure.
and how big is the initiative now. Cities in Latin America are the engine of the region, right? We have about 140 cities that generate about 70% of the GDP of the region. And cities are, we know, I mean, they said that already, are the hub of innovation, entrepreneurship. A lot that Bloomberg says, that the innovation and entrepreneurship comes from people coming to the cities, or loves people coming into the cities. But besides all that, we found that Latin America is in a critical situation in very other aspects related to cities. We have 25% of the population live in slums. We treat less than 20% of the sludge of the wastewater system. Latin America is the most violent region of the world. It has more than 20 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants, while the average worldwide is 7. On the top of that, we are very vulnerable to climate change, what you were saying. 70% of the population is vulnerable, is living in low-lying areas or coastal areas of the region. So we were wondering how to work with all the cities and how to have a higher impact. And we found out, looking for the information within the region, is that there are 140 cities that we call emerging, that they are growing faster economically and demographically than the big cities of the region and the average. I mean, we have 2 or 3 cities in every country, like Medellin, Cali in Colombia, that they grow faster than Bogota. We have Cordoba and Rosario that they do the same thing in Argentina in comparison to Buenos Aires. Same thing in Brazil. So we thought that we could have a much higher impact if we work with them on their future development plans than if we do it with the Rios, the Buenos Aires, etc. So what we did is we developed this rapid assessment tool, which is we made a rapid diagnostic in every city. We developed 150 indicators, and they go from fiscal aspects to social aspects, health, education, to infrastructure, to solid waste, energy, transportation, which is key. So what we do is we take a picture of the city, and we see where the city is. And to some extent, we are defining what we consider sustainability, because we compare those indicators to a standard that we set, to a benchmark that the banks set within their own specialists. So once we have that map of the city, we identified 7 or 8 topics that they are in red, what we call, we have a stoplight system for this 25 topics and 150 indicators. So we also have the city to prioritize those topics. I mean, you have 8 problems, okay, which is the most important one? Which is the one that you have to focus on? So we develop also a prioritization system. We do a public opinion poll. We run an economic assessment of each of the sectors, and we compare to the GDP of the city to see which has the higher impact, and also which is the capacity of adaptation of all these topics to climate change. So once we have all that, we say, okay, this is the topic that we're going to have to focus on, and we're going to bring money to finance and study. All this is done on grant basis. This is grant money from the bank. The cost is about 1.2 million per city. So once we have identified the problem, we have the money, we fund the study, and we have 2 more stages. One is we try to connect that with financing from the bank, with our own money. And if we don't have the money, we don't have a program in that country, what we do is we try to connect it with the World Bank, with CAF, with other financial institutions, or with local funding. It depends, or with private funding sometimes. And also what we try to do along all this process is we push to include people in the process. Through the public opinion poll, we know what people think, as I said before. But what we also do is we set up a monitoring system. And this is done by civil society, with the academia, with the public sector, with the private sector. They set indicators with the municipality, they set objectives, and they follow those objectives through indicators. So this is a process that takes about a year, and we found that it was extremely successful for the cities. I mean, it was a very high demand. Our objective initially was to have 25 cities, one per member country of the bank. Then we extended that to 50 because there were other cities that were interested, so we didn't find funding within the bank. But what we did is we established partnerships with countries, with institutions within the countries that were interested into that. And just to close, for you to understand, which are these institutions? Are the ones who have to lend money in those countries. The development banks, the Caixa Económica in Brazil, the Findetera in Colombia. These guys have to lend money to municipalities. And in general in Latin America, some of you must be familiar with this, they don't come up with projects. They come up just with a page and say, okay, this is the project that I have for transportation. And say, no, this is an idea, this is not a project. So how you turn that into a project? So these financial institutions love the initiative in the sense that now they know what cities really need. They check this prioritization that we have for the sectors, and they say, you know what, you want to invest money in education or, I don't know, in paving, this is not your priority. Your priority maybe is health. Your priority maybe is education. So now we have 50 cities, and it's going to turn out to be maybe 100, we don't know. But so far, the objective is 50 for 2015.
Great, thank you. Jordi, circling back to you, give us a sense, prior to your work in Latin America, you worked in Spain, you worked with the European markets. What are the major differences you're seeing between the two regions? And what are some of the, I guess, major challenges you're seeing in Latin America that maybe you didn't encounter there?
Well, Latin America has a huge potential, but at the same time, they are behind other areas in the world regarding basic infrastructure. So the challenge that they have is they have to invest in basic infrastructure, construction, some of the matters, but at the same time, they must invest in technology. So where is the balance point here? They need to find the balance point, because smart construction is actually the construction. Once you build, you insert technology in at the same time. Most of the European cities, European countries, they did it on the opposite. They built first, and over years, they were inserting technology. So Latin America has to make those decisions that they have to really make an effort in more in technology investment. At the same time, they do the basic infrastructure. The second point is, I was mentioned before that some of the current economies are a bit fragile. They are suffer devaluations. They suffer capital outflow, but at the same time, there is a lot of potential in terms of growth eventually. So innovation is a key piece. That's the reason why everything is connected into my previous points. So Europe made some mistakes in the past in terms of they were benefited from high levels of growth in some few years, but they didn't pay attention to somehow that those growth models were based on construction, tourism, on some. They didn't really pay attention in increasing the competitiveness ranking. And when the economy cycle changed, some of those countries went down, especially in the south of Europe. Latin America still is experiencing growth. This is the time to really invest more in innovation pieces and to develop the information society, because the commodities that is the main incomes that they are using, that's fine, but it's not enough to make a stable growth. And the reason why the rush here is important.
And can you identify which cities are you seeing a lot of this kind of innovation and growth right now in Latin America, or which ones you're seeing kind of lagging behind a little bit?
I think you were talking about Medellin. Well, Horacio, Medellin is a good example of the city that they pay a lot of attention. Rio de Janeiro, because of the Olympics, they are really investing big time. There is another city in Mexico, Guadalajara. They are really taking seriously. So the message here is most of the cities around the world, they talk about this. They talk about smart subject, smart moves, but they don't really, but some of those, they don't really make the right sharp moves or bold steps that they have to do. It's not only about technology investment. Right. It's to make the right decisions, to integrate the different departments, workflows, and decision-making process all across the city. As long as you integrate that and you provide technology, that will create better performance, that will create a better business model and business opportunities, and you will set up a virtuous circle that will increase the GDP of that city.
Great, thanks. Sean, give us a sense, you are working with a lot of different startups, and I know you don't focus specifically on Latin America, correct? It's just kind of cities in general. So give us a sense of what are some of the startups working on? In what cities are they most prominent?
So the range, it's kind of become funny, but the range that maybe expresses how many things, or the range of things that we work with. On the one hand, we have a company that has created a platform that is crowdfunding for homeless people. Right? So the idea is that instead of giving someone $1 every time you pass them on the street, if they have a drug problem, guess where the dollar is going to go, right? There isn't a way for them to recover from that situation. And so the idea of this platform is to create really a donation platform that you can use your phone, or you can go online, you can see someone's story, you can understand how they got to be homeless in the first place, and you can understand what their particular issue is that they're trying to solve. Some of it might be education, some of it might be rehabilitation, and the implications are really interesting in terms of social impact and access to social services. So that's sort of one end of the spectrum. By the way, that's a for-profit company, and I expect that it is going to be a multi-billion-dollar company, right? If you look at how social services are allocated around the world and look beyond homeless people, the number of transactions, it is a huge part of the banking system, right? But if we can start off with the lowest, the people that need the most help, I'm more than happy to be a part of that. And the other extreme is we invest in a company that makes commercial drones. So not the kind that shoot at people, allegedly, not that I'm saying they exist, but the kind that take pictures, right? So off the shelf, very cheap hardware that people use to play around, maybe shoot surfing video, things that have been sort of entertainment value are now being used in areas like mining and construction and management of port facilities. And the idea is that you don't have a pilot, and you don't actually care that there's something flying around. You just say, I need real-time images of this place in the world, and then wait for the images to come in. Right? And so that is, those are the types of the things. Both of those companies are based in San Francisco. To give you a sense of just a completely different company, there's a company in Nairobi that operates in the redundant connectivity space. So the team founded something called Ushahidi, and Ushahidi actually was initially developed to monitor elections in Kenya. So the idea was, if you get to your polling station and someone's interfering with the voting process, you could text, and then they would geolocate the text, put it on a map, and then show it to people that were monitoring the voting process, and they could send people to that place. Turns out that that was very useful in any emergency situation. But what the team realized is that anytime you go into an emergency in a city, it's great if you can recreate the map, but then what happens if you can't access it? What happens if a lot of the infrastructure, the power is cycling on and off, right? Or your Wi-Fi that was working a minute ago now goes down. All the things that you just created, all the new maps of the situation go away. And so they created something that they call the brick, and it's a battery pack. It's a cellular modem, it has an optional satellite connection, and has a Wi-Fi connection. And then you can plug in different things. But the idea is just that it's a very simple brick. If you want to modify it, if you want to do anything with it, but they sell it for $99. And they're finding that a lot of people, either in developing countries or in emergency situations, are buying that. And the team is based in Nairobi. The part of the manufacturing happens in Austin, and they fund it out of San Francisco and New York. So, in terms of what cities, it's sort of sometimes hard to answer the question. But in terms of Latin America, and again, I think what's really interesting to me, I like to use examples like Waze, right? So does anyone use Waze? Okay, so a couple people sort of depend on it. So if you go to Sao Paulo, I don't know who's sat in traffic in Sao Paulo, but the intersection of people who use Waze and people stuck in traffic in Sao Paulo, it's a very good fit. Now what's really interesting is, if you look at a congestion pricing system like the one in London, that's really interesting, but that's $500 million a year operation, right? It's all dedicated sensors. Yes, there are people employed. Yes, it works. But how much better is it than a free version of something that lets you decide how you move around the city? And again, I think that's really interesting because that just wasn't, you couldn't conceive of that 10 years ago because we didn't have smartphones, and you couldn't conceive of that because you didn't have a cloud. These were not possible things. So I think what I see in a lot of developing countries and in Latin America is just this intersection of cheap hardware, ubiquitous smartphones, dependable cloud, and data. It just lets us do things that were not imaginable, 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we found that too in the charticle. In here, I don't know the exact page, but there's a charticle on all these different apps in the region, and it's just, there's so many cool things out there that I had no idea until we started researching that you can download on your smartphone, and yeah, it just really transforms the way you live your life and the way you go around your day-to-day activities. And Waze is amazing. I mean, yeah, I couldn't live without it. Horacio, tell us a little bit about the feedback you've been getting from citizens or policymakers in the cities that you've been working on, and some of maybe the more challenging situations you've come across and problems you've had to overcome in some of these areas.
Yeah, well, the feedback is very positive. It's something that we didn't expect to find through the implementation of the initiative, is that we really created like this space, this moment for the administration of the municipalities to think about how they want to become in 50 years. I mean, Latin America lost the tradition of making urbanism. I mean, most of our cities, they did a lot of urbanism 100 or 150 years ago, and that was lost. These guys are so into the day-to-day problem that they can't think. The mayor of a city can't think about next year or in 5 years or in 10 years. So what we are challenging them to do is to think in 50 years. That is one thing. And that happened. Actually, these guys are saying, thank you that you gave me this space, that you forced me to stay here for a day and think about this and how to do it with the team. The other is how to work on multidisciplinary basis. This was a challenge for the bank itself because we're not used to. We work on sectoral basis as well, and we don't want anybody to get into our territory. And the cities work exactly the same way. So, and Anna did that we have the first time that we went to one of the cities and we have the mayor at the table and we have all the team at the table. And the guys who were working on the land use plan, it was the master land use plan of the city, and they said, yeah, we have been working for this for 6 months, it's on the way, it's going to become a nice plan. Then came the guys of transportation. They were working on their own plan. And I asked something that I thought was completely stupid at the moment, and I said, hey, did you guys talk to the land use guys? And they looked at each other and said, no, we didn't talk yet. The mayor got so angry that he said, you know what, we're going to stop the meeting right here and we're going to come back in 15 minutes. So he just talked to the guys with a lot of shouts in the back. And then they came back and they said, okay, we're going to work together from now on. So the guy was saying, this is great. It's great that I had the chance to see what all these guys are doing at the same time. I never do it. We never had the time. So this is interesting. And at the same time, we are forcing them not only to have this vision, but to plan again, to make projects, not to have ideas. What I said at the very beginning sounds stupid, but it is like that. Cities and states, they come with projects that are just one page. They need to plan, they need to develop real engineer, architecture, real planning, and that is hard to do. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I want to add is something into the discussion about what a smart city is. Yes. Within the bank, we found that talking to people from different regions, there are very different definitions of that. Mm-hmm. Right? People from Japan think essentially how you use technology for natural disasters. That is what they link to smart cities. In Europe, they think more about energy efficiency, how to save resources, and how to use them in a most efficient way. In the US, it's more about the technology to save time, to how we do things, in a more comfortable way. And I think Latin America is somewhere in the middle, but we are leaning towards more natural disasters, how to use technologies for natural disasters. And maybe we're going to talk later about Rio de Janeiro, what you were talking about, but I think that is one of the best examples in Latin America of how to use technology to save lives.
Mm-hmm. Do either of you guys have examples from that, or how?
Well, he was mentioning Rio de Janeiro. We set up a center of innovation in Rio de Janeiro, and we are actually approaching different fronts. One front is about natural disaster, but other front is energy saving, energy optimization. For example, we are building a software that, with partners, that will insert into the meterings, and with a specific racked network and technology, we will make that grid very efficient, around 30%, 32%. And by the way, this is something already with a specific customer, which is a large utility electricity company in Latin America. So there are a few effects here. One is the environment, obviously, sustainability, that's one. Second is innovation, because this is something completely new. Third is job creation, because there are people, that partners that developing the software, the technology. Those ones, they have been done it, they probably will replicate it all across the Latin America, and those companies engaged in developing, they will increase, they will make it bigger, which is important from innovation perspective, because you will create a kind of environment that will multiply all the innovative efforts. So the other thing that we are working in the center is about healthcare, for example. Healthcare is a big subject here in Latin America. So in some of the European states, healthcare is very expensive. People are spending, the models in some cases are not sustainable. So in Latin America, I think we are starting to somehow, if we use the technology from the beginning, like remote diagnosis, like a better collaboration across hospitals, avoiding replicating the different tasks and the different things in any single city or even any single region, we will create a model that would be much more efficient and much cheaper than existing countries. So that's another example this is a kind of smart at the end. Probably you take the city hall. Today, most of the city halls, the different departments, they don't talk a lot. They use different technologies. They use different procedures, different process. Even that create different cultures. So unless you define a model that to put all these things together, and fully agree with Horacio, if some specific smart city project goes to his hands, he should go through the fact, this is the governance model that we plan, this is the protocol, this is the smart regulation that I will define, and this is the different workflows and technology that we will use it in order to develop such a smart city. It couldn't be an isolated projects or solutions. It should come like an integrated model.
Right. Yeah, the continuity would have a lot bigger impact in these cities if people talk more with each other and use the same technologies and strategies. Well, I'm going to open it up. I want to make sure we have enough time for question and answer. So yes, Boris. We have a microphone coming around, if you don't mind, because this is being webcast.
Thank you. A bit of politically incorrect question, but throughout history, we've had many examples of cities that had been simply abandoned. Sometimes we know what happened, others we theorize about what happened, whether it was war or illness, but they were simply abandoned. Is it possible nowadays to consider simply abandoning, or that a city has an expiration, that in terms of a sustainability of green, of intelligent standard for a city today, some of these cities are not viable anymore, and it's as with any other equipment or object, it has an expiration or it has a time of use, that it's simply worth abandoning the city. Is that an alternative to consider?
Thank you.
That they're beyond repair.
The example I started with the example of one specific textile industry area. That was what it happened 4 decades ago. It was literally abandoned. A lot of delinquency. It was a tragedy because it was around 11-12% total extension of the city. So at some point, the people there, they really went through that thinking process. What should we do? We definitely walk away and we limited that, or definitely we face the situation, And I think this is the second point. There is no way to abandon anything. You abandon something now, you will pay for it eventually. So you need to face the challenges and to manage the way to develop a new business model. And the point here is a city needs to create wealth. Wealth will create fair wealth, which is distributed wealth all across, that will create job creation, will create more innovation all across. So I remember to be part of the discussions before the Olympic Games about that district. Actually, the Olympic Games was a really trigger for that district as well. And they started to build certain elements for that event. My point here is, let's take opportunity to get any single major event, not just Olympics, a few of them, but any city could get a significant event that will attract investment and that will create models across.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. But actually, there are examples on both ways. I think it depends a lot on the bondage of how tight society works and the local society works. And I think the best example is Medellin. I mean, what we were talking about, this is a great city, it's a model city now in Latin America. But if we think, I mean, you remember the statistics that I gave. I mean, Latin America is the most violent region in the world with 22 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants. Medellin 20 years ago had 350 against 22, and the average worldwide is 7, and they came back. And in my opinion, they have the most efficient administration in Latin America, which is public and part private, and they work great. So, I mean, if they made it, I think any city can make it. And I think that there are other cities like Detroit that they would have to reinvent themselves. I mean, Detroit is going to have to be different. Their city is going to have to change. It's no longer going to be the car city. It's going to have to be another type of city. And they are working hard on that. But, I mean, it's hard to disappear, but I think they're going to have to be, new models.
I think this happened already recently. So, I mean, if you said, 40 years ago that New York would be a place that families want to live, people would have thought that was a joke, right? So, I mean, trying to remember, the types of movies, The Warriors, right? This was like the representative of what it would be like to live in the city. And so I think there's sort of natural cycles. I think what's different at the moment is that there's some cases where you're not going to have a choice, right? And so I don't want to keep going on and on about sort of sea level rise, but the Dutch already figured this out, right? You have to give up some space to keep some other space. And then it's just a question of what's the process to do that. And I expect that we'll have some of those situations. It's inevitable. Will it be orderly? I don't know. I think, for example, I look at a place like Miami, and it's, if you're a real estate developer, you sort of 5 years. If you're a bank, maybe you 30 years on a mortgage. If you're an insurer, at some point you look at all of this and you say, well, hold on a second, no one really cares about 50 years, right? So at what point does everyone go, hey, I can't live and keep a skin, right? And then will that be orderly, or will everyone wake up and say, I'm not going to be the one left holding my house in a place that's not going to be supported? Right? So I don't know. I don't know if that's pretty or if that's the federal government saying we'll take care of it. So it's going to be interesting. I think different societies like Latin America may have more fiscal constraints. The US may have more constraints in terms of which part of the government is responsible. Is it federal or state or county, or is it a municipal? So I'm not sure, but I think that we've had cycles before, and somehow there's a point at which people decided that New York was better than the suburbs. I'm not sure why, but that's the cycle.
I personally think that Miami has a key role to Latin America. Everybody watch. One thing I learned, that everybody from Latin America, they watch Miami. So Miami has also a lot of desire to make progress regarding, and they have done a lot of things. All the Dade County, and so that's the reason why, from our perspective, we pay a lot of attention to Miami, because it could be a great platform as a showcase for some of the Latin American countries.
Great. Lots of hands. Oh,
Good afternoon. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jorge Cortez, founder of Momentum International, committed to social innovation and entrepreneurship. My question is for Mr. Terraza about, based on the study and research of the IDB, is there any way for us as entrepreneurs, professionals, to have access to those priorities in order to move in the right direction, and how can we get in touch with that and apply for those and across all the cities of the Americas?
Yeah, there is. Actually, the information is public. We have on our website, which is you have to go to the IDB, Inter-American Development Bank site, and in topics you look for Emerging and Sustainable Cities Initiative. And there we have the action plans we have already like 8 up there, and we are working on another 10 that are going to be up there in the next 6 months. So most of the information is going to be there. But we are also working with Microsoft. Actually, what we did is we developed this urban dashboard in which we're going to have all the indicators, the 150 indicators for each city, and you're going to be able to go across them to compare cities, and this is going to be a very nice tool for people interested into that. And that is going to be up and running in a month's time. So yeah, I mean, you go to the website, check it out, and otherwise you can get in touch with me, no problem. You can access information.
that's great. You said in 1 month that will be live?
Yeah,
the
that's going to
indicators?
be up in 1 month.
That's great.
Yep.
Great. Yes, right here.
Hi.
Hello.
My name is Heather Raftery. I'm with FDI Consulting. My question is, in general, I think the assumption is that investment in technology there's always a positive relationship with technology investment and sustainability. Do you think there is sufficient consideration about a negative relationship? I asked because I was listening to NPR the other day, and they were talking about the cloud, and if it was compared to a country, it would be their energy, the amount of energy they consume is comparable to a small country. And we were talking about how, people rely on the dependability of the cloud. If you don't have the energy to support it, what happens then?
Thank you. Sean, do you want to take that one first, or Jordy?
I think Cisco benefits from what I'm about to say very directly. But I think if you look at where a lot of the interesting sustainable energy investments are, Apple, Google. So if anything, yes, the energy requirements are going up, but the same people that are using more energy are some of the most thoughtful groups about how they use water and how they think about how to source the energy. So whether it's hydro or whether it's electric or wind, I think there's definitely a correlation between, Google's looking at, here are my numbers. What's the cost of search? Well, it's actually energy. Every time you do a search, right? Every time you use Google Apps, every time you turn on your phone, call something from the cloud, Google pays for that. And I think they understand that it's not sustainable in every sense, financial or otherwise. So I think that's interesting. I actually think that the people that potentially are causing a bigger problem in the short term are actually the people investing and are likely to fund a lot of the things that are going to be the most promising solutions.
I think that cloud and all these models are very well connected to the concept of virtualizing resources. Virtualization means energy savings by the fact. Why? Because you utilize what you use. When you own something, when you buy something and you only utilize it 50%, there are other 50% that you are not using, but you keep it. Now, if somebody else utilize that, the remaining 50% you are maximizing and optimizing. So there is energy savings in that process. And we are moving in that process, virtualizing everything.
Great, thank you. Yes. third row, and then
Hello?
you next. Yes.
Hi, my name is Hernan Guerrero, working with the AI Miami. My background is in planning, geography, architecture.
Would you mind standing up so we can see you? Would you mind standing? Thanks.
Hi, I'm from Panama. So my question
Great.
is, do you still see corruption as a problem in Latin America? And how do some of these, in some of these cities, towards achieving some of these things that we're talking about? And do you see technology as maybe being a factor there in changing that?
Thank you. You want to start?
Yeah, okay, it's my turn. It seems that it's my turn. Yeah, of course it's a problem. It's a huge problem, and it is there. But something interesting that we found out in the initiative is that we have some indicators that are related to transparency from the municipality. And transparency has to do with if they show online, the budget of the municipality, how much they spend on that and this. The reaction of the people in general in the public opinion poll that we do sometimes is not fair to the municipality. I mean, there are many municipalities and mayors that are corrupt, I'm sure that happens. But in several of these cases, the people really, their morale and their capacity of belief in politics is so low that one of the priority topics in this public opinion poll was always transparency. I mean, the number one was violence, that is number one. And then the second or third is always transparency. And in some of these cases, municipalities were doing a pretty good job. I mean, they were really showing the results, and they were showing how they were using the money, and they were being blamed just because of the national situation, of this general idea that everybody is corrupt in politics and in municipalities. So at municipal level, if you ask me, yeah, I mean, there is corruption, but it's not something that we see that tangible when we are working with them in the initiative.
Thank you. Do you guys have anything to add? Or no? Great, thanks. Sure, back here on the straight. Sure. Thanks.
Hi, my name is David. I work for a nonprofit organization called Techo. We work in 500 extreme poverty communities in 19 countries, and my concern is regarding inequality. We have one of the most unequal regions in the world, and I just wanted to know is if in some of your initiatives, inequality is taken into consideration as a key component. It's more of an added component that will eventually be reduced. That's.
Sorry, I didn't hear very well. You said quality?
Inequality.
Okay.
In our country.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, for us, in the initiative, I mean, that is one of the main topics. It's one of the 26 topics. It's called inequality, and most of the urban analysis that we do, it is related to that. We are trying to analyze how people live. The public opinion pool also tests how the services are provided to each sector that we are analyzing. And something that we add to the initiative in the second round is this. Most of us, we think about these indicators on average terms for the city, right? So there are cities like Montevideo, like Mar del Plata in Argentina, where most of the indicators were pretty good. You have only 2 reds. But that was on average basis. So what we did is we started to analyze those indicators by neighborhoods, by sensing areas. And then we started to find, of course, that there were neighborhoods with huge problems, that were every single topic indicator that we were analyzing was red. So this was a big change from the initiative from the second year on. We started to analyze that and to focus our intervention particularly in that area, in the most unequal area where people are suffering the most. So yeah, it's a first priority for us.
And just to follow up to that too, what kinds of things did you change, or what did you specifically focus on in those neighborhoods if you were working to combat inequality?
Well, what we do, I mean, for instance, the average indicator for the city, maybe to kids not going to school, was 2%, 3%, 4% on average. When you go to these neighborhoods, it's 30%.
Wow.
So, and the same thing was with the health system. I mean, most of these kids had to go to the hospital downtown. I mean, they don't have a place to go there. So what we did is, focusing on that, we started to develop multidisciplinary projects there, together with the municipality, of course. And what we did is in Montevideo, that's a very nice example, in a very poor neighborhood where we set up, there's a new square for the kids to play, there's a hospital right next to it, and there's a new school. Wow. And it's a new centrality, for the city itself. These kids and these people have to go downtown to get all of that, even to get fun, because they don't have good public spaces. So we work on all that. That was funded 100% by the municipality. We didn't put a peso there, and it was a beautiful project.
And I think this is one of the purposes of a smart city as well. You have millions of sensors taking data, describing behavior, people flow, for example, some indicators from many sources. So one of the initiative, the main point is to increase the standard of living of the citizen. And as very, very well connected, actually. City Hall should pay attention on those subjects. They should have specific applications and software areas, elements that will allow them to get that big data and to end up with some specific conclusion. Now, some of the conclusions may have commercial applications to understand, how they can do better businesses, other businesses, different business model, but they are specific indicators very well connected to the fact that they have to pay attention and to invest, to make things happen regarding increasing quality of life in those areas. Behaviors, it's so important because actually a neighbor, the way you take a kind of a neighborhood versus another is so important, and most of the cities don't really know.
Excellent. Yes.
Hi, my name is Javier Alonso. I just wanted to ask the panelists, you started off discussing the role of the city and the mayor, and I just wanted to pick all your brains about where you see sort of transnational governance coming into play in South America. Obviously, Mercosur and UNASUR are sort of weak in comparison to other transnational governance bodies. But I just wanted to see where you guys saw the transnational aspect of governance fitting into sustainable cities in Latin America. Thanks.
Thank you.
When you mean transactional government, you mean some of the governments that they are for a period of time and they leave, or you meant for the administrative processes into the city? Okay.
I'm going to go first again. In the case of cities, what we are seeing is we don't see that much influence like Mercosur on that. What we see is more relationship between big cities, these regional metropolitan areas. And regional cities, if we can call it. I mean, we saw access like Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, Porto Alegre, which is huge access, and then they are creating, 75% of the GDP of Brazil there. Or you see in Argentina, it's Buenos Aires, Rosario, Córdoba. And you can go, and you can even make it to Mendoza, Santiago. You see it to some extent in Lima, La Paz, or in Lima. So this is the type of relationship that we are seeing in economic terms between cities that are much more stronger than the Mercosur thing or the Pacto Andino, right?
So I mean, I see some unusual things, but probably not in the way that you think. So Airbnb, for me, is a really important transnational governance entity. I know that sounds crazy, but if you look at the way they organize communities of hosts and people that go to the cities, they have a tremendous ability to influence what happens in the city. Right? They touch a lot of people, and the people that they interact with tend to be influential because they move around a lot. They see what's happening in other cities, and they bring ideas back to where they are. And so I'm actually very interested in some of those types of organizations. In part because the interests are aligned. They, for example, have to demonstrate that they're going to pay taxes, right, in the same way that hotels do. And so they have to demonstrate that they're going to be good corporate citizens. But they have a very efficient way to reach really large groups of people across large groups. So, simple example, if you want to get carbon monoxide detectors deployed really quickly across a huge, well, Airbnb has a lot of incentive to do that. They don't want fires in hosted apartments that result in more regulatory enforcement for them. And so that's one initiative that they work on. And the interest for me is we're looking at low-cost air quality monitoring, right? And so I think there's some other entities. I mean, I'm going to use Airbnb, but I mean, you could do this for car sharing, bike sharing companies that operate globally. So just a thought.
Great.
Normally, when a reasonable city size, they set up a new cloud model platform, citizen services, and they have a kind of metropolitan area around. For example, could be 45, 50, 60 smaller municipalities all across. Most of the times, you can take advantage of those models and to replicate it partially, or maybe totally, depending on the size of the rest of the cities in the metropolitan area. So I think from transactional point of view and from administrative point of view, to avoid reinventing the wheel and really to take advantage of somebody has done with more resources in the past, you can manage a kind of metropolitan area association and to take advantage of it. This is happening, for example, in some of the European cities. Now that is from regional point of view. From national point of view, or even international point of view, there are many specific cities associations. Metropolis is one, for example, that they are probably around 100 cities around the world. They sit down, they share experiences, and they share models. We don't need to replicate the city protocol all across. Just one main, I would say, one main foundation is enough. You can customize specific elements, but the foundation is the same. You can avoid a lot of costs by replicating.
Thank you. Was there? Oh. We'll go here and then here and then here.
Hi, my name is Gabriel. I want you maybe to forecast the future of this initiative. I mean, how technology can make cities more sustainable, less unequal, maybe the scale bad behaviors that is related with corruption. Thinking in maybe 10 years from now, how do you see that? How do you see technology working in order to help in cities to become more sustainable?
Yeah, in my opinion, technology is a great tool, something that is going to help us a lot. But if we don't work on the educational side, we're doomed. I mean, we can do whatever we do in technology terms, but we have to put people first. I think that after working so hard on the initiative, trying to find a nice definition of sustainability and everything, we couldn't find. I mean, we found one that it was nice and informal, but it was terribly boring. What we found out is that we need to put people at the center. People at the center physically. We don't want more cars in cities. We want people walking, people biking, less cars and less accidents. And we need to put people in educational terms at the center. And I think that for Latin America, that is the key. I always finish my presentation after talking so much about infrastructure, because I'm an engineer and this is what I like. Education in the end is the key. Without that, we're not going anywhere.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, I think I always make a point of mentioning Minecraft anytime I get to speak to a large group of people. So I think I look at my kids, and what's fascinating to me is, so they play a game, but the core way in which they educate themselves about the game is they watch YouTube recordings of what's possible in the game. Right? So if you want to know what's the range of things that you could do, you can think about it on your own, or you can go and see what other people have done. And I think that's fundamentally the most powerful thing that we have happening right now, is that 10 years ago, it was okay to say, I didn't know, right? I didn't know you could do bike sharing. I didn't know you could do car sharing. Like, it was fine to say I didn't know. It's very difficult to say that today, and I think in 10 years it will be impossible. Right? The example of a solution to the thing that you're talking about right now, whether it's water, whether it's rapid transit, whether it's people using more rapid transit, whatever those incentives are, I think there will be a YouTube video of whatever that is, and to say that you didn't know about it is not going to be an excuse anymore. And I think that's the interesting thing.
Education is a key point. Probably new models of education, models that foster more imagination rather than memorizing or to memorize models. New models that probably foster more entrepreneurial subjects. I will never forget in Stanford University, a teacher of New Adventures, they came out and say, hey guys, do you know what I'm a successful man? Why, and maybe you have to learn how to be. And what I say, because I failed 10 times. After the 10 times failing, the 11th and I was successful. And I made a point, you know. So that spirit of, listen, let's do something, not just that you finish your studies and okay, my dream is to get a fixed job and to work through that job all life in a specific, let's say, sequential methodology, right? Imagination. The new generation, they need imagination. They like imagination. They don't think linearly like I used to think. For example, we started to study with a book. There is a starting point and there is an end point, right? The way they study, there is not the starting point, there is no end point. They just go back and forth and they do things in a different way. So imagination, so education is right. And the technology, how to use the technology into education is a key point. For example, you imagine in any single school has a video endpoint into the network. Through that video endpoint, you can connect other schools all around the world. Not just, you will be able not to be isolated. In the culturally speaking, you will be able to see more inclusion, more diversity, understanding other thinking process. So technology is crucial. And education, most of the governments, and I know some of the governments really they pay attention on it and they put a lot of money, they have to ensure a full modern network in all different schools as a big part of that international network, and using these kind of screens to interact with other teachers and with other students from different places.
Thanks. We have time for one more, and I know I wanted to get to you. You've had your hand up for a while, so let's go to you here.
Hi, my name is Cub Falchandani. I'm actually a technology attorney. And kind of my question is very simple, and it's kind of along the same lines as the last question, was is there a central repository, kind of a knowledge-sharing device? Because a lot of the innovations that are happening around the world, I don't feel like they're adequately communicated to other cities. I think that could be very well taken advantage of. I mean, maybe the answer is YouTube, but I don't know if there's anything else more specific for this.
Thank you. Anyone?
I mean, this is the last one.
Let's let everyone go.
So,
I don't want
not that we know, at least not from the technology point of view, in general terms, no. There is no general repository. What we find is we make a lot of meetings now between mayors, between technical people from different municipalities. They learn from each other, from very different topics, from technological aspects to fiscal aspects. There is no central repository of information. I mean, we would like to start something to put the seed and to put some information, some pesticides that we are doing in our website, but it's going to be tiny in comparison to the knowledge out there.
There are a lot of information in the web from different sources, a lot of information. And some information is, let's say, there are partial solutions, partial approaches, but overall, there are much more information than 7 years ago. And I remember 7 years ago when you talk about smart city, it was a kind of general concept. People, got confused. Is that is a new trend? Is a new political party? Or is something different? No. Right now, there is more consistency and more knowledge and awareness in terms that the future of the city is crucial for the competitiveness to the entire country. And there are some actions around. Now, there are a lot of things to do from regulation point of view, from structure, to set up the right structure, how to translate some of the general concept into a real structure and a real plan. But the good point is everything is underway, I would say, conceptually speaking.
Thank you.
We don't hear it here.
Sorry, we can't hear you. There's a microphone coming, but okay.
I think looking at examples like what New York City has done under Mayor Bloomberg's initiative and the Center for Urban Progress, I think that's a great example of working with NYU, Columbia, the University of Toronto, definitely, and you can go to their website and see programs that they're working with.
Correct.
I mean, I think one of the things that we look for actually as an investment thesis is marketplaces, right? So we think that, for example, we invested in a company called Architizer because we think that if you're going to talk about sort of low energy building, at some point if I am looking for a commercial architect, how do I find a large set of commercial architects who know the most about low energy? And conversely, if I wanted to find the best vendors across a range of, from passive materials all the way through to sort of active energy management, where do you look for that? And so, marketplaces are one interesting area. And then I think that there are definitely initiatives. I like some of the work. I'll pick off a couple, like C40 cities. I think is expanding from 40 to a lot more cities. And I think to the point about sharing what's working and how things are measured and how to prioritize. The other group that I like personally is Agile Cities. They did sort of a 50-city survey of priorities. But I think marketplaces are coalescing, and some of them are very esoteric. There's a hardware accelerator in Berlin, right, that's just for early stage companies that want to do hardware related stuff. Now, I don't expect that to show up anywhere, right, until someone figures out that, this is, small groups of people doing sensors and actuators in the built environment. But going back, sort of 4 or 5 years ago, we did a project on low energy apartments. Even within 3-4 years, a lot have changed, right? A lot of the things that were amazing to us in sort of submissions of ideas are now, available in source. So.
And also the sense that most of the innovation that you will apply to smart city could be translated into different market segments. For example, one of the company, they really developed one specific sensor. In the city, they were able to apply that technology into the automotive industry. So you see that a small company became more productive, competitive, because it increased the value and based upon new orders coming from different market segments. And that's what we call Internet of Everything. Today, less than 1% of the total devices in the world are connected to the internet. Less than 1%. So we're talking about trillions of devices. So you can imagine when you connect all of them, all the big data coming in, and what do you supposed to do with that big data? A lot of things that we don't know yet. So that's a new era, that's a new industry, new jobs.
Well, thank you. With that, I want to thank everyone for what was an extremely vibrant discussion. I think our panelists were wonderful. You guys represent very different sectors, but I think very complementary in a lot of ways. Oh, excuse me. It's okay. Thank you very much. But very complimentary, and so I want to thank you guys for your participation and coming to Miami for this. And hopefully everyone can stick around for a little bit of a reception right now. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.